You know, some buildings are more than just stone and glass, right? They're landmarks. They become these powerful symbols, almost characters in the story of a city. But how does that happen? How does a building become a true icon? Well, let's dive into the incredible and honestly pretty surprising story of one of the most famous structures on Earth, Notre-Dame de Paris.
I bet a lot of you remember exactly where you were for this. April 15th, 2019. Live on TV all over the world, we saw these horrifying images of smoke and fire just pouring out of the roof of Notre Dame. And then, that one moment, the one that made everyone gasp, the cathedral's famous spire, this 19th century masterpiece, just buckled and then crashed down into the flames. It was absolutely heartbreaking to watch.
The reaction was instant, and it was global. People felt this genuine collective grief. And that just begs the question, right? Why? Why did so many of us from all different countries, all different backgrounds, feel such a deep sense of loss for a building? What is it about this particular pile of stone and wood that means so much to so many?
Well, to get to the bottom of that, we actually have to rewind the clock. And what you find is kind of shocking, because the Notre Dame that we all know and cherish today, well, it wasn't always so beloved. In fact, for a huge chunk of its history, it was basically a forgotten ruin. It's really hard to wrap your head around, but after its golden age in the Middle Ages, the cathedral just fell on brutally hard times. I mean, it was neglected, stripped of its art, vandalized, and by the early 1800s, it was in such bad shape that the city of Paris was seriously considering just tearing the whole thing down. Let's just walk through this timeline of disaster, really. So in the 17th and 18th centuries, these misguided modernization efforts led to them ripping out the original medieval stained glass. Then came the French Revolution in 1793. The cathedral gets seized, it's de-Christianized, and turned into a temple for this new state ideology, the cult of reason. Revolutionaries, thinking the statues on the front were French kings, climbed up and literally beheaded all 28 of them.
And wow, this really brings it home, doesn't it? What you're seeing here on the right are the actual heads of those statues. They were lost for almost 200 years before they were just randomly discovered during an excavation in 1977. Think about that. This wasn't just a building falling apart. It was a violent, deliberate attack on its identity.
So the cathedral is a wreck. It's empty, it's desecrated, and it's on the verge of being demolished. What on earth could save it? Well, the answer is just incredible. It wasn't a king, it wasn't a bishop, it was a writer. A novel was about to completely change Notre Dame's destiny.
Okay, so picture this. It's 1831, and this 29-year-old author, Victor Hugo, publishes a novel he calls Notre-Dame de Paris. Now in English, we know it way better as The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Hugo was absolutely horrified by what had happened to the cathedral, so he wrote the book with a clear goal in mind, to make the people of France fall back in love with this masterpiece they'd forgotten.
Now, there's this line in the book that is just perfectly ironic. A character sees a printed book for the first time, points at the cathedral, and says, "This will kill that." He means the printed word will replace architecture as the great record of humanity. But for Notre Dame, the exact opposite happened. Hugo's book didn't kill the building, it brought it back to life.
And the book was a smash hit. Hugo brilliantly made the cathedral itself a main character, this living, breathing, mysterious being. People were captivated. The book sparked this huge public outcry, a national campaign to save the cathedral. The effect was so powerful that even today, the cathedral's official website just says it flat out. Victor Hugo saved Notre Dame.
So, with the public totally behind the cause, money was raised for a huge restoration. But here's the thing. This wasn't just going to be a simple patch-up job. Oh no. This was going to be one of the most ambitious and, frankly, one of the most controversial restorations ever attempted. The project was given to two architects, but it was really the singular vision of one man, Eugene Viollet-le-Duc, that would shape the Notre Dame that we see in our minds. He was a genius, a scholar, and he had some very, very radical ideas about what restoration actually meant.
Okay, so you really have to get your head around his philosophy because it's everything. For him, restoring a building didn't mean fixing it or making it look like it did in the 1300s. No, it meant creating an idealized version of it, a kind of perfect Gothic cathedral that, in his words, may never have existed at any given time. He was trying to build the cathedral's perfect form, its ultimate dream of itself. And the spire, that's the perfect example of this in action. The original 13th century spire, which you see in the drawing on the left, had been taken down long before the Revolution. Viollet-le-Duc didn't just rebuild it. He designed something completely new from his own imagination. His spire on the right was taller, it was more dramatic, more ornate. It was his vision of what a perfect Gothic spire should look like. And that is the spire the entire world watched fall in 2019.
So his work was this amazing mix, you know? On one hand, he did incredibly deep historical research, but on the other, he was also an inventor, adding brand new elements, like many of the famous gargoyles and chimeras that we all picture when we think of Notre Dame. In a way, he was finishing a masterpiece that the original builders had only started.
I mean, this was a massive project. We're talking 2 decades of work. It was a complete transformation that took that crumbling, forgotten ruin and turned it into the magnificent, romantic, and truly iconic building that would capture the world's heart for the next century and a half.
So let's circle back to our big question from the beginning. We asked why the world grieved for a building. And I think the answer is clear now. It's because Notre Dame isn't just a building. It's a story.
You see, its story really has 4 key acts. It was born as a medieval masterpiece. It became a revolutionary ruin, totally forgotten. Then it was resurrected as a literary legend thanks to a book. And finally, it was physically reborn as this idealized architectural dream.
In this status, this importance, it was made official in 1991 when UNESCO named it a World Heritage Site. And look at their wording. They called it a definite reference for the entire Gothic style. It wasn't just France's heritage anymore. It officially belonged to all of us.
And that, right there, is why the 2019 fire hit so hard. It felt like another terrifying, tragic chapter in this unbelievable story. We weren't just watching stone burn. We were watching a symbol of resilience, a story of destruction and rebirth, being threatened all over again.
So the next time you see a picture of this facade, you're not just looking at a medieval church. You're seeing the scars of a revolution. You're seeing the imagination of Victor Hugo. You're seeing the genius of Viollet-le-Duc. You are seeing a story told in stone that's almost 900 years old.
And that, of course, brings us right up to today. That cycle is continuing. From the ashes of that terrible fire, Notre Dame is being restored. It's being reborn once again. It just makes you wonder, doesn't it? In this next chapter of its long, dramatic, incredible life, what story is it going to tell next?